Welcome to Vision Pros, the show all about spatial computing, visionOS, and getting work done on the Apple Vision Pro. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show.
But ideally, I would like to use different contexts for different actions. Like maybe you do journaling in, Hawaii, or, you just like anytime you see the environment, your brain immediately jumps there. In theory, you could automate it to where the appropriate applications open with the appropriate window spaces, all stuff we don't have yet, but you can kind of see a vision of the future where contextual computing could be really friendly to this environment.
Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Vision Pros. I'm pleased to be joined this time by David Sparks, who you may know from MacSparky.com. He's been on my other podcast, iPad Pros, 3 times now, on episode 99, 126, and 184, if you want to check those out as well, where we chat about his general usage of the iPad, and then have an episode all about DevonThink, and then in episode 184, we talked about Obsidian. So lots to dive into in those episodes on iPad Pros. But in this episode, we dive into how he is using the Apple Vision Pro. So in this episode, we dive into his thoughts regarding the platform overall, his favorite features coming up with visionOS 2, which should be launching very soon here. We also dive into how he is using the Apple Vision Pro to get writing done and to kind of brainstorm with Freeform. And a big reason of why I wanted to have him on is the Apple Vision Pro encouraged me to get a Mac finally, a modern Mac. So we dive into some just tips and tricks for those that have come back to the Mac after a long time of being absent because of the Vision Pro, and some just general Mac talk is had at the second half of this episode. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so a couple different ways. First off, go out and review the podcast in Apple Podcasts. Every review is greatly appreciated and helps send the right signals to Apple to show this podcast more in search. If you'd like to get the podcast early along with iPad Pros early, you can do so over at visionpros.fm/Patreon or by subscribing in Apple Podcasts. My great thanks to everyone that supports the show financially. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. With that, here's my discussion with David, all about the Apple Vision Pro. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Thanks. Good to be back, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had you on iPad Pros a couple times now, and now the Apple Vision Pro is out. And for those that aren't familiar with your work, can you kind of introduce a bit about you?
Yeah, sure. I like to talk about technology and productivity, particularly as it relates to Apple technology. And you can find me over at MacSparky.com, where I've got field guide books and video courses I've made, and I've got the MacSparky Labs where we test out stuff together, and I'm also on the Mac Power Users Podcast and a couple other podcasts as well.
Excellent. And I'm curious, your background with headsets, is the Apple Vision Pro a brand new category for you, or have you dabbled with some of the gaming headsets for just purely entertainment?
Just dabbled is really the right term. At one point, I had bought a cardboard contraption to, use with my iPhone. And then I got the Quest 1, I think it was called, the Facebook thing, where I had to reenact my Facebook account in order to use it. And that was fun, but it didn't really grab me. And then I was up at Apple for WWDC when they announced the Vision Pro. So I was heavily invested into it and bought one on day one.
Excellent. Yeah, I was super jazzed about Apple Vision Pro, obviously, and it was announced on my birthday, which was a fun thing for me.
Okay, cool.
As far as your expectations for Apple Vision Pro prior to launch, has it lived up to what you were hoping at least to use the product for, or kind of what the marketing led you to believe it could be useful for?
I feel overall, for me, my expectations weren't extremely high for the productivity uses, and that's something I'm always interested in. I was a little disappointed with the keynote when they announced it, because we'd been hearing about Apple making a headset for years. And I thought, wow, now we're going to find out what this can do that we hadn't thought of, because Apple often does that. They come up with a new technology and it blows your mind, and you're like, oh, I never thought of that before, and now we can do this. And And then when they did the WWDC keynote, they just did the usual things that you do with a headset. I mean, of course, the fidelity and resolution is much higher than what I've seen, but they didn't really come up with what I would call like a killer use case that I thought they might. And so that lowered my expectations going in, which was probably for the better. But I also was interested in it because one of my big ideas about computing is the idea of context, and I do feel like that context switching is very expensive. So, like getting yourself in a space where you can say, now I'm working on this one thing, and my computer can set itself up to do that thing for me and make me just think about that thing. Well, that makes it easier to do the work and uses less energy. And I've always felt like a headset would be like the natural of that. Like even on the Quest, I had like set up some app that made me feel like I was at a chateau up in the mountains, and it really didn't work. The resolution wasn't high enough to work for more than 15 minutes without getting a headache. But I could see the promise of that, and I really felt like, well, Apple could do this right. So I felt like that was kind of the stuff I was interested in going in, and largely they haven't let me down. I mean, I do have quibbles. I will tell you that, but I think they got that part of the story right. Although there's work still to be done.
Yeah. Do you find yourself able to work like in the past? Most people work at a desk and whatnot, but I find myself with the Apple Vision Pro grabbing my, half of a laptop I have left here, and just sitting on a like comfy sofa chair and being very like the ergonomics seem pretty good for that actually. Yeah.
That's one of my main use cases is I like to write in Vision Pro environments. Mm-hmm. And specifically I decided early that Yosemite would be my writing environment. And, so I go in Yosemite Valley. I've got a keyboard and trackpad in a little combined tray thing I got off of Amazon. And I sit there with it in my lap, and I put off big writing projects. I'm disappointed about the app support, but Apple Notes works good enough for this. So a lot of times when I'm on my Mac, I'll set up via automation some of the writing projects I want to send, which are notes in Apple Notes. And then I'll just go ahead and sit in Yosemite Valley with no interference. I don't... there's nothing else running. There's no notifications on, very focused and write. And it's really strange how my brain is completely tricked when I put it on. I forget that I'm in my office, and, I just sit there and write alone for an hour or two, and then I get that hard stuff done. And I really find that like one of the best uses for the device for me.
Yeah. With Yosemite, I really rather enjoyed it during winter because we get snow up here. And I could put in the half view, and by the window, I've got the snowy pine trees next to me, and then in front of me, I've got Yosemite in the snow. It's this kind of a nice blending of my world and the virtual world.
Well, I'm in Southern California, so I don't get any snow. Right. It is strange how like your feet get cold when you put them in the snow. It's just a very strange sensation. But yeah, like that kind of use for it, I think is good. I don't think they've leaned into it enough yet. I wish there were way more environments. I wish there was better apps for that type of focused work. But I definitely see where this is heading.
Are you on the beta visionOS 2? Okay.
Yeah.
Have you tried out in developer mode? You can enable your Mac virtual display to work in any fully immersive app. So you could be like an Avengers Tower with your Mac as a full screen writing app and be working. Is that kind of stuff appealing at all, or do you prefer the visionOS apps that are less distraction?
No, I think that's good, and I think it's a step in the right direction, although I think that we should be able to donate environments across the system, and it should. This is essentially a hack, I think, what they're doing.
Definitely.
I think it should be even easier than that, and I should be able to be on Tatooine and using Apple Notes or whatever, and so it's a step in the right direction. It actually tells me that they're thinking about that, but it's not really the ideal methodology I would use for it.
Right. And how often is like your Mac hooked up to it versus you just want an even more focused mode of just the separate keyboard and trackpad with it?
almost never do I use my Mac with it. I mean, it's interesting because like the stuff I do on my Mac, I prefer to sit at my Mac and do. I do a lot of production work. I make a lot of video and stuff like that. And for that, I've got a big screen. It's very sharp. I have it laid out just the way I want. And I'm very fast on it with a keyboard and a mouse. And I find Vision Pro gets in the way. In fact, there's a lot of like stuff that people do through Mac attachment that I just don't find that beneficial. I have the same feeling about like things like using, mail and task management and stuff. I feel like a lot of those things, they don't really lend themselves well to the interface. My eyeballs are not sharp enough or whatever that it slows me down. I think, and I know this is early days and hopefully that gets better over time, but I'm disappointed with those types of things. I think it's for productivity for me, the sit down and writing thing is by far the most useful. There's a couple other kind of productivity workflows I could come back to later if you want me to, but overall it is not a replacement for my Mac. It is a contextual environment that I can call on demand.
Is part of the problem with some of these apps is that one of the misconceptions I had was Windows can't really get super small, even though I feel like they should be able to get smaller. Like OmniFocus and the Mail app, like they're just big,
Yeah. Yeah. Although, the fun part is you can stick it on the ceiling, so it's out of the way. But it's not. Yeah. It just, I find switching between them is more work than it is on a Mac. I mean, I'm just trying to find where this stuff is actually useful and not like a trick. Maybe, and I've talked about this before. Maybe I need to like really just like promise to use it for like 60 days and see if I can get better at the workflow.
Yeah.
But I find it is just too frustrating to want to sit there and answer email in there, for instance, when like I'm trying to like click a button and my eye is looking at the button, but it doesn't think I am, and then I have to look to the left of the button, and then I can't see what I'm clicking. It's just it suddenly becomes a big game, and this is definitely an early days problem. I suspect version 2 or 3 of this thing will be much better at stuff like that, but for now, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I use the trackpad quite a bit when I'm trying to use the apps and all that.
Yeah.
It's appealing to me to have visionOS apps, like a couple alongside the Mac, as like I've got all these, smaller Mac windows and maybe a couple next to it kind of thing. One thing I was thinking of with the screencast that you do was, recording the Mac screen while having visionOS with your outline and stuff that you wouldn't want to show the audience. Is that kind of on a separate monitor with your setup already? So it's not really
usually what I do is I keep it on an iPad below the screen.
Okay.
So it's kind of, I use an alternate device for that, but trying to do that strapped into Vision Pro, I'm not comfortable enough yet with Vision Pro to do that.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then how often are you finding yourself like wearing it? Like,
I would say probably reliably 3 times a week, sometimes more. In addition to, so there's the productivity stuff, which I probably do 2 writing sessions a week inside Vision Pro. And then I do play with some of the games, and because I've never had really, even though I had that Oculus, I've never really had this virtual game stuff. I actually enjoy some of the goofy little games. With I think one called Bomber Room, Bomber Room. And I apologize, I have a cold as I'm recording this, so my voice is a little wacky. But I love firing rockets across the room or bombs across the room. And I've got a big, where my workroom is, it's perfect for that. And then the other thing is, I have a wife and 2 daughters. And there's, sometimes shows I like to watch. I like sci-fi and stuff that they're not interested in. And it's so delightful to strap in, and watch an episode of Star Wars or something with it. Like, I've never had a TV this good, So the media consumption is just stellar for me.
Yeah, the media it's incredible. I was watching Don't Breathe last night because I was in the kick to watch Fede movies after seeing Alien Romulus. And my wife walked in. It's like, why is your mouth open in like terror? It's like, because I'm watching a scary movie. Because they're full immersion, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, Tim, do you ever put like AirPods Pro in when you watch a movie with it?
Most of the time, because I've got a almost 2-year-old daughter that's on my chest as I've watching it, so I want to have the audio just
Yeah,
for
you
me.
can't do that. Yeah. I did it once just to make sure it worked, but I find that totally unnecessary. I think the built-in audio is really good. And I've watched some really great movies in there just with the built-in audio, and it's fine.
Yeah, if it was just me in the room, I totally would. And especially if you're eating food, I hate the sensation of having AirPods in your ears when you're trying to you're chomping down on something.
Yeah.
But yeah, the built-in audio, it blows my mind. And just the audio team with visionOS, it impresses me, the soundscape they're creating with the apps having placement in your room. And the only OS Apple doesn't have a mute toggle for, because I think they're so proud of, you don't want to mute anything.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, when I first got it, I got I watched the closing of Moana, and because I hadn't seen any 3D movies in it, and I don't know if you ever saw the movie, but at the end, she comes into her own as a woman, and it's just a very moving in, and I started crying, and I realized I couldn't wipe the tears because I had this thing strapped to my face, and I got tear stains on my little, the little rubber thing that goes on your face. So my wife thought that was very funny when I showed her afterwards. Yeah,
the 3D stuff is, I'm buying so many movies. It's like, oh, that's in 3D. Let me check that out, even if it's not my favorite movie. But when your favorite movies are in 3D, it's like, oh yes, this is great.
Yeah. And I haven't even mentioned the immersive stuff, which I think, Apple's making. I feel like they should have been making a lot more immersive video for this thing, because that's really one of the greatest things about it. In fact, that's the mystery to me, is how a $1 trillion company made a product like this and they didn't have new immersive video like every couple of weeks. It just continues to baffle me. I mean, the only reason I can think is that they're still figuring it out, and they don't have that many units to sell, and maybe they're not that big of a hurry. But every immersive video on that thing just blows me away.
Yeah, it's incredible, and they need more of it. Like, bring a team, set them loose in Africa, just have them go wild, and
yeah, it's not that hard. Or just find out a way to put these cameras at a baseball game pick one baseball game every week, or one football or soccer or whatever, and have a variety of cameras set up and let people once a week watch a sporting event. Or say, go to Taylor Swift. How much money is it going to cost to put one of these on the stage for one song of the Eras tour? And they've just got. It's easy to spend Apple's money, but at the same time, it's Apple, and they have a lot of it. So why not? If they want us to really get the most out of this thing, I feel like they could have done more.
Definitely. Yeah, I am definitely rewatching movies. That's like, I just want to see what this looks like on a great screen. Like, people said there's no content for Apple Vision Pro, which is somewhat true with that stuff, but every movie is content for Apple Vision Pro, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. But even that immersive video with the parkour, I am physically reacting to that. I guess I'm afraid of heights, because some of those shots I just am pushing myself back in my chair as I watch it, and I just want more of that. I feel like it's such an opportunity.
Yeah, I'm excited for their first narrative thing they announced coming later this year. Hopefully it's more than 5 minutes, but we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you made any comfort modifications to your headset?
Yeah, this is embarrassing. I bought a thing off eBay that allows me to use 2 separate adjustable headsets. Have you heard of this?
It's a solo top, right?
Yeah. So basically, I've got the real big fat comfortable one. I've got one on top of my head and one behind my head. So I've got 2 different dials. And so the thing is $15 off eBay, and then you got to buy another $100 strap. But you know what? I figured in for a penny, in for a pound, and everybody I know that bought this loved it. So I do as well. Apple should have made something like this. I guess they didn't want it. It doesn't look that cool, but boy, is it comfortable.
Yeah, I have one too. It's great. The dual loop, whatever the angles they went for, just never worked for me, and it was just I was getting Velcro caught in the top band, and my hair and stuff, and it's so much better this double one.
Yeah.
And I do like that they're fabric bands because you can actually lay back against a chair. Most VR headsets, there's these hard plastic things that would be uncomfortable to do that with.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them have like a battery in the back and stuff too.
Right.
Yeah.
As far as doing writing work in Vision Pro, is it mainly, you said Apple Notes. Do you find yourself using iPad apps at all on the Vision Pro?
Not too much. I mean, at the beginning I played with them, but the problem is I do like using my eyes. I mean, I figure if I'm on Vision Pro, I should try to use Vision Pro apps. And, most of them like Drafts. I'm a big fan of Drafts, but he's not really got it quite there yet for Vision Pro. And like trying to hit those touch targets with your eyeballs is really hard. I would love to see IA Writer and some of the other, writing apps come over. But they're, I think everybody's taking a slow approach because they're not selling that many of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the mode where the iPad can be vertical as far as a window size, which helps you have a couple more windows around you than the horizontal stuff.
Yeah. Although I'll say for writing stuff, usually I don't want any more windows. I want as few as possible. Just really me and the words,
Reference, the stuff you're writing, you don't need like a reference document up at all. It's purely...
A lot of times if I do, I'll set it up on the Mac and just put it at the bottom of the document.
Okay.
So then it's just there for me in the same window. But this is not like using Apple Notes is not the end game here for me. It will get better. Yeah.
Yeah. Another really cool visionOS 2 thing is if you have an iPad Pro with like a Magic Keyboard hooked up, you can now AirPlay mirror that into the Vision Pro and the trackpad comes through. So if there are like, there's very few like Fairlight Audio Recording Studio is like one of the apps that's on Vision Pro, but you can mirror that with the audio going to the Vision Pro. And so the mirrorings, they're letting you bring more stuff into Vision Pro, which I'm happy they're doing.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah.
It is just a bummer that all the continuity features are like Mac first, really, like the Mac Virtual Display.
Yeah.
The iPhone thing. Like, why can't we bring the iPhone to Apple Vision Pro? All this kind of.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a bandwidth thing. I would imagine they're using a lot of that processor for the pass through.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I've thought about the same thing with AI. The Apple Intelligence is non-existent on the Vision Pro.
I also want to be able to use my big iPad with my small iPad through universal control. Like, let me use one pair of keyboard and trackpad.
Give me everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to go through the Mac, which is... as far as visionOS 2 stuff, you've been using it. What have been your favorite kind of tweaks and enhancements to it so far?
The ability to see my keyboard in the environment. I mean, that's by far... I mean, I'm a touch typist, but I still want to look at my keyboard once in a while for one reason or another. And that seemed to me like that was a miss that they didn't have that, but they fixed that. That's good. And a few more environments, although like that's just like I want more immersive content. I want way more environments.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also stability. This is the one platform where the betas are more stable than the shipping software. And that's always kind of true with new hardware platforms, but it's just been a while since we've had that. It's always a reminder. It's like, oh yeah, they fixed a bunch of bugs that are not in the public shipping version.
Yeah. Like one notorious bug in visionOS 1 that they finally fixed in visionOS 2 was if you open Safari and open the file picker, you'd have a soft reboot every single time.
Yeah.
This was not in visionOS 1.0, but it was introduced in like 1.2, and they never fixed it. It's like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
But, it's fixed in 2.
How about you? What's your favorite part of the new? I hesitated to call it version 2. Honestly, it doesn't feel like a version 2.
The refined, what should have been shipping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite things is when I'm using the Mac as the keyboard in the input.
Yeah.
In beta 5 or something, they added the ability for the QuickType bar to be enabled. Before that, if you were using Safari with the Mac, Safari, visionOS Safari in the Mac, you had to open the passwords app to get to your passwords. Because there's no QuickType bar and there's no other way to get at them. Yeah, so that was like, just the little things are just like very nice.
Something I would like is the ability to trigger dictation without having, I mean, like with a gesture. It just, where I don't have to have any sort of keyboard open to push any sort of button. And I know you can do that under limited circumstances, but there should just be some like universal gesture which you just go straight into dictation mode, but there isn't. Yeah.
The gestures have been nice. I've been getting a hang of like the rotating hand thing. It took me a while to get the hang of just the home screen indicator.
Yeah.
One, but I'm getting better at that. I often just tap my head still because it's quicker. But yeah.
You got to know there's a whiteboard in Cupertino with about 15 more gestures on it, right?
Yeah.
I feel like they just don't want to overwhelm us, and it's going to take a while for them to unload them all. But I bet there's a lot more gestures out there because the way they're tracking your hand, you could do a lot more,
Yeah, I hope one day, like we currently have thumb and pointer. I'd love customizability with like, let me do my thumb and middle finger, thumb and...
Yeah.
Because it recognizes that, and it'd be cool to have custom kind of clicks,
Yeah, exactly.
So as far as context switching, one thing I found I just love to do is it's like midnight. I've tried to knock this thing out. Let me go in a daytime environment and like give me the fake illusion it's still daytime. And I can see during the winter months coming up how that'll be nice to have some extra daytime hours. Is that something you think you'll end up doing, or do you leave it on automatic?
I do manually switch it because I actually don't like working in the dark, So even at night, I put it in daytime when I'm doing like work in a context. So now that I think about it, I'm already doing that. But but see, I live in Southern California, so it's not that bad.
Right.
You're further north, so it's more extreme for you in the winter. And so that's not, but I could see how you would want to do that. But ideally, I would like to use different contexts for different actions. Like maybe you do journaling in, Hawaii, or, you just like anytime you see the environment, your brain immediately jumps there. In theory, you could automate it to where the appropriate applications open with the appropriate window spaces, all stuff we don't have yet, but you can kind of see a vision of the future where contextual computing could be really friendly to this environment. And like I said, then if we can get the environments donated from third-party applications like the Disney ones and get those you can put those into the mix as well. I mean, I feel like there's a lot there for it. Another productivity use case I've been playing with, and I still haven't nailed it down really, is I love the idea of a giant whiteboard. I read a book a couple of years ago called The Extended Mind by Annie Murphy Paul, and she was talking about all these scientists and smart people that have like 8-foot high and 20-foot long whiteboards or glass boards in their offices, and they're constantly working out problems on them, going back and forth to them. I don't have space like that in my studio space, but boy, would I like it. And then I got thinking, well, I could do it virtually with this. So Freeform is there, but when you're in the native Freeform app inside Vision Pro, it's really not. You can't like go up and write on it. It doesn't. You sort of can, but you really can't. And the workaround I found is I just get my iPad out, and I have the same document open on the iPad and on Freeform, and then I can use the Apple Pencil to write on the glass of the iPad, and it shows up on the screen, which is kind of a nice workaround. I'm not even sure Apple wants us to be able to do that, but I'm able to do it. And but it's not the same as that ideal. And I don't know if the ideal is possible, but I sure wish it was.
Yeah, I'm so curious on the future of this stuff because it's definitely a fixed focal length. It seems like Apple doesn't want to encourage people to have windows very close to their face. So I wonder in a couple generations if they can do a variable focus lens where that would be more comfortable and healthy for your eyes.
Yeah.
In college, I remember I bought a 6-foot wide whiteboard that I would bring in and put in my dorm room. It just took up an entire wall. It was one of the best things I ever did.
Well, I've got a glass board in here that I use, but it's not the same as like having a huge one. And I'm still kind of struggling to figure out how all that fits. But But yeah, that is one piece of it that I feel like I'm close, but I'm not there yet. Maybe we need a better app or something. But combining it with the iPad works. But then you start thinking about, like, goodness gracious, how much money have I spent to do something that most people do with a piece of whiteboard or glass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the pass-through camera works well enough for you to be able to see what you're kind of inputting there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It works fine. Yeah.
And you're working off a single freeform, or do you have a couple different projects?
Yeah, I've got different ones from different things, yeah.
What model did you end up going with? Did you get the baseline, or you get more storage in yours?
I upgraded the storage one tier. I'm not sure if in hindsight, I probably didn't need that, but
Yeah, I've got the 1 terabyte. It's almost completely filled.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. I have a theory that the more storage you get, like, you'll find a way to fill it, like whether it's like iCloud storage photos, they'll just kind of suck up extra space kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
As far as Apple Mail, what are the biggest issues there on visionOS for you not using it?
It's just not as fast as it is on the Mac. And on the Mac, I have Apple scripted the hell out of Apple Mail because you can, and so I've got it doing all sorts of automation stuff that I can't do in Vision Pro. So, and I have a love-hate relationship, well, mainly hate relationship with email, So I really try to spend as little time in it as possible, and this is too slow. I mean, I just want something I can blitz through and get it, and I often send email out of Mail, like I'll send it into my task manager, and because again, it's all about context. If you can deal with one category of email at a time, you again get rid of that switching cost. So, like just leaving an inbox full of email to me is not a good idea, and it's not really made for a Power Mail user.
No, it's good at basic stuff, and
it's embarrassing to me that Apple still doesn't have a lot of its own native productivity apps on Vision Pro. I mean, OmniFocus and
Pages and Numbers. Like, what's going on? Microsoft's
reminders
showing you up. Reminders, yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, OmniFocus's app, I love what they did with it. And they're like using all sorts of Apple technologies. Like, you can scan like a document or take a photo while wearing the Apple Vision Pro with like your iPhone or iPad sitting next to you, and it puts it into the visionOS app through their whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
they got on board with Swift UI, so they get all the shortcuts, for that stuff.
So, any other just general visionOS stuff and Apple Vision Pro stuff before we dive more into the Mac?
I guess I would just say I feel like there is a general disappointment with the platform in the community from what I've been hearing. In my MacSparky labs, there's several labs members that have bought them, and a lot of them find themselves not using them very much. A couple of them really like it, and those are usually people who are cutting-edge people or people who travel a lot. Like there's one guy who's in business, and he takes it on a road, and he's got this great theater and extended monitor. So there are uses for it. But I feel like it's a very strange launch to me. I feel like Apple is really looking to see how we are using it. I feel like more like a guinea pig than anything else. And I understand that there's a limited number of these things they can make, but I do wish that Apple had been more aggressive with productivity applications and specific Vision Pro content like immersive video. I just feel like there would have been more by now than there is. So I don't think they've given up on it, but I think this is a much slower burn than I expected. And for people who decided to wait out the first generation, you probably did the right thing. But it is really fun having it too at the same time,
Right. Yeah. I feel the Vision Pro works best for are either iPad people that have their workflows that they can do on iPad, and that translates pretty well over the Vision Pro because you just have a bunch of iPad windows as long as the iPad apps are enabled.
Yeah.
And then the people that like Mac Virtual Display good enough that they're happy working there, and they get the benefit of having visionOS apps alongside that. I think that's another benefit. And just the ergonomics, I feel, of having the Mac display kind of wherever you want to be. I think that's like versus being hunched over a laptop.
Yeah, agreed.
And then One other visionOS 2 thing that's just I forgot was even a thing. We can rearrange app icons. That has just been transformative to like I finally subscribed to Call Sheet because it's now on the front page and I'm actually looking stuff up as I'm watching movies.
Yeah, although it's just kind of ridiculous that we're excited about that. That should have been there
right? Definitely
from the beginning. Yeah.
So the Vision Pro finally got me to upgrade my Mac, David. I had an 11-inch 2011 MacBook Air that was still up and running High Sierra. It's kind of slow. It had one job, and that was to run iTunes Match when I bought a new limited edition soundtrack, So I, since the Vision Pro launched, I saw Vitici's article and was inspired by that, and I found an M1 MacBook Air for $300 on eBay with a broken screen.
Yeah, okay.
Took off the screen, and now I've got a $300 M1 MacBook Air, and it's just a little Mac slab, and it's such a fun form factor because I'm at a desk right now, and I'm just plugged into an external monitor, and it feels like I've got a little portable desktop Mac. The keyboard is the Mac, which is such a fun kind of Apple II, callback.
Did you took the screen physically off, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
And it's such a fun thing because it's just the keyboard and trackpad, and just just slides right in the bag. Sidecar works great with it on the iPad. I realized that you can also use Apple Pencil Hover with iPads now to control the mouse, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Yeah.
Super cool. Would you buy something like this if Apple made like an official Mac slab to like tote around instead of a laptop?
I don't know. I've always felt like there is like an overlap between iOS and Mac that they should take advantage of. The obvious one to me always seemed like the Microsoft Surface Studio, which was kind of like an iMac shaped thing, but it had a really clever hinge in it. Wouldn't it be nice if it was a Mac when it was vertical and then it would tilt down to become a big giant iPad and you could use a pencil to write on top of it? And I feel like Apple could definitely stand to be a little more exploratory or daring with some of the stuff, or be willing to take a few risks. They just make so much money that I feel like it's like even like I was talking to someone recently about the mini iPhone. They sell billions of them, but that's not enough for them. It's like take a few risks and do some stuff like this. I'd have to see a device in a laptop form factor because I like the big screen when I'm working on a Mac. So, to me, the laptop is always a little bit of a compromise. So I don't know if I would want that or not, but I would definitely be looking at it closely.
Yeah. I mean, it's so fun. And like you're sitting on a couch or whatever, and you're in your Vision Pro, and you're able to plug, input devices into the Mac as you can, and when you're at your desk, plug into Thunderbolt dock, and you got your full array.
I guess I should be like you. I should just get one and rip it apart and give it a try just to see what it feels like. Yeah.
It does. It just changes. I don't know. It feels very modular with like where you can use this thing.
And the irony is that's cheaper than a Magic Keyboard for your iPad. $300.
Yeah, I got it for 11-inch iPad Pro this year. Keeping my big one, but I didn't buy a keyboard. I'm just using this, and it's wild. Like I can be offline, middle of nowhere on a car trip, and universal control, it works. I don't need to be on any same Wi-Fi. It like discovers it, and like it's great. Like So for someone that kind of upgraded from High Sierra all the way up to like Sequoia, what are the highlights that I've been missing here?
Yeah, well, I mean, everything is connected better. Everything is more stable. The interoperability is better than it's ever been. That's why we're getting now, every year, Apple's announcing features that just hit all the platforms at once.
Yeah.
I mean, a few years ago, that was never the case. And now, you hope 2 or 3 years later they'd catch up. But now everything just kind of is working. Just like you were talking about the Omni Group earlier, I feel like Apple has spent a ton of effort and time getting things to the point where all the platforms can kind of like grow together. And I think that's probably one of the nicest things. The other thing is stability. The ability to plug a laptop into a monitor or third-party device or whatever and have it just work. I feel like they kind of lost the thread on that for a few years, but now it's much better. So, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff now.
Yeah, I was happy with Audio Hijack. I didn't have to do some scary safe boot to install it. It just works now, which is nice.
Yeah.
One of the cool things is just how integrated Sidecar is for the iPad.
Yeah.
Like it's you don't have to go in any special settings. It's like you're in, say, agenda, and you go to the window menu bar, and it says move to the iPad that's sitting right next to me. It's like, it's wild.
Have you done accidental Sidecar yet? Where you're looking up and suddenly your mouse just disappears and you don't know why, and you realize, oh, it's over there on my iPad.
I've not had that happen yet. Occasionally. Okay. I've occasionally had the mouse disappear into the non-existent physical display of the laptop.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. Yeah, that's even more troublesome, right?
Yeah, it's like, where'd it go?
Yeah.
As far as so when I'm using Sidecar and just the iPad with the Mac, Apple Pencil and Hover works for controlling the mouse and clicking.
Yeah.
The text input's the weirdest thing because I have to add the show keyboard viewer thing in the menu bar to enter text. Is there a better way on the Mac to do this? Are there third-party apps for text entry that you know of?
All right. I lost the thread there. So what?
Yep.
Give me the exact scenario.
So I've got Sidecar open and I have no keyboard. I just have my iPad open in my hands.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm trying to enter text. What are the ways to do that without a keyboard?
I don't even. Yeah, I've never hit that problem because I use Sidecar always with it next to my Mac.
Yeah.
You got me. Let me know what you figure out. My main use for Sidecar is like when I record a show or something, I can just put all the recording tools and everything over on that screen, or like notes or anything that if I'm recording a screen I don't want it to be seen, I can put it on there. But I just as often, because the iPad apps are so good, I'll just run it as an iPad.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like sometimes, I want this as an iPad. No, I want this as another Mac screen. And I do the thing where I throw Audio Hijack on the iPad screen, and it's like a full screen app. And it's very nice like that.
Yeah.
The wraparound display with Mac Virtual Display, I'm very curious to see how that affects kind of my usage of it. Does that bigger space? That's not intriguing at all because you already have the nice giant monitor at your desk kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not going to play with it. I feel like I'm an outlier. I think most people that are using Vision Pro are a big fan of this virtual Mac mode.
Yeah.
But to me, I actually like to kind of keep the Vision Pro more self-contained. Like I said, to me, the context idea makes a lot of sense. I guess I could explore more context if I just used a Mac Virtual Display for them and for apps that I don't like. I mean, I've already got the keyboard and the trackpad in my lap. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I'm curious. I guess they're just rendering the part you're looking at with the high resolution is the trick they're using. But we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I'm curious if it will run better on the more beefy Macs or if it'll run just fine on the base M1s,
Yeah. As
far as visionOS apps, are there any, what would the number one app you'd want ported to this platform be?
A good, thoughtfully designed writing application, would probably be the one. They do have, name escapes me. It's the coding app, but it's also a text editor.
Runestone?
Yeah, RuneScape.
Runestone.
Yeah, Runestone. Yeah. And then, and I've used that one, but I would like to see some kind of the usual suspects get over there. I mean, honestly, I'd like to see drafts thoughtfully done for it. And I think Greg is probably going to get there, but it's just not there yet because drafts is such a kind of lingua franca for words. But then there's other apps out there too that I think would be kind of fun to see come over. I'd like to see more idea development and generation apps. We've got the MindNode application there, but I'd like to see more stuff like that where you use the visual space because I feel like that's a really good use for an environment like that. And I don't think there are as many apps trying to take a crack at that as I would like to see. Because I feel like there's a paradigm there that we haven't seen yet that would probably make it really useful, and I just don't know what it is. So yeah, I'd like to see more of those type of applications. Like I said, the quick productivity, like calendar, contacts, email, I'm not as interested in that stuff. I feel like strapping into Vision Pro for me should be more focused than that. I mean, kind of the whole point of it is to not have that stuff around when you're doing that. So that is something I'd like to see. I'd also like to see some of the AI apps get aggressive, like where I could sit and just talk about an idea and it would develop visually in space for me as I talk about it. Not necessarily even doing transcription, but instead just like building kind of a mind map of my words and giving me the ability to, kind of work with it, in some way. So yeah, I feel like there's some really good apps that are kind of on the verge of my creative vision, but somebody needs to make it and figure it out and all the hard work that comes with that. But they're out there. I feel like those types of apps can exist, if the right developer puts the right amount of time into it.
Yeah. Yeah. The lack of text like apps is just baffling to me. My favorite one is Everlog, I think. I'm not sure if you've tried this out. It's designed for journaling, but it's a Markdown app, and you could repurpose it with different journals of like, here's Max Sparky blog, here's like a script I'm working on. And I in my mind, it's the best writing tool out there for Vision Pro, which is weird.
I'll check it out.
Yeah. And then have you played around with Mind Nodes? Like, it's basically a brain dump, and then once you're done, it like reformats it as a standard document kind of app.
Yeah. And I'm a big MindNode fan, but I can't seem to get this app doing enough for me. I think it's got a little bit too many rails, if that makes sense.
Are there other kind of workflows you do for productivity on the Vision Pro, or is it just writing and the freeform boards? Yeah,
it's mainly those two. I've tried other things, and I've not been able to get them to stick. I've tried doing like OmniFocus reviews in there. I've tried doing mail. I've tried like doing future planning in there, but I just don't find it. I find there's just too much friction, and I get frustrated. And it's like, no, this isn't going to work, So I am trying to use the platform where it's fluid and not force myself into it all the time.
Yeah. You don't use Craft, do you? I saw that they had an app drop recently for Vision.
No, I have. I used them for a little while, but they really just weren't quite what I needed for collaborative stuff. So yeah, I use Notion now. And I've opened Notion in there, and it looks great. But it also looks great on my big screen. So I just don't find it that compelling in that environment.
Gotcha. Yeah. Has the meditation stuff hit you at all? Are you using the mindfulness app at all?
It's funny. I started meditating in 1990, and and back then they taught you to meditate very differently. There were no apps or anything. So I'm a bit of a purist. My meditation is just a simple timer, and I don't have any apps, or I don't need the extra stuff. I find it gets in the way. I mean, the hard part of meditation is being alone with your thoughts, and the more apps talk to you and show you pretty pictures, the easier it is to avoid doing the hard part. And I don't mean that to belittle it. I think it's a great on-ramp, but I think if you really want to get into meditation, at some point you need to lose all that.
Sure. No, I can understand that. And that's the hardest part of meditation, like sitting down in a quiet room with just you and your thoughts. Like
you can't see it. I don't know if you can see it here. There's a cushion on the floor behind me here, and I sit there and look at the wall about 30 minutes a day. So there you go. That's my app.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we overcomplicate things.
I think it helps. I mean, because it's really hard. And when I first started, there were no such tools, and I remember the first time I did it for 5 minutes, it felt like it was impossible. And you get better at it over time, and the apps actually kind of help you make that easier. But at the same time, I think at some point you need to let go of the apps. But that's a whole kind of another conversation.
Yeah. One thing I like to do is just before bed, sometimes I'll just load up a nighttime environment with no apps open and just like sit there in the environment and enjoy that, which is...
Yeah, that's cool.
It's relaxing kind of thing to jump in these environments.
Another thing I found that I really enjoy is I enjoy the gallery applications to see sculptures and paintings, like life size. I can really enjoy that. I guess as I'm getting older, I'm becoming more of a fan of fine art, because it's just amazing having it right here, and it's realistic enough that it feels like it's right here.
Yeah, and a lot of those like museum apps, they are good at like describing what this art is and significance of it, which is it's a cool use of it.
Yeah.
As far as the Mac, what are some of your favorite utilities? One that I've discovered is Better Display, and that's awesome when wearing Vision Pro, because I can on the fly change the resolution of the Mac Virtual Display to be bigger or smaller. So like at times I'll blow roll small to like 800 by 600 to have like a full screen Messages app that can be in my fully immersive environment and stuff like that.
That's cool. Yeah. That's a good idea. Yeah. I don't have any specific recommendations for Vision Pro because I don't do a lot of Mac stuff on Vision Pro, but I have tons of recommendations for you if you're looking for ways to use your Mac now that you've got one on your desk.
Yeah. What are some just general favorite utilities overall?
Well, I'm a big fan. I've mentioned drafts a few times, but just quick capture and action on text is super important. Drafts does a good job of that. I like it because it's got automation hooks that are very powerful. If you don't want something as powerful as that, I'd recommend there's an app called Tot, and it limits you to, I think, 6 windows, and it doesn't give you all the automation tools, but it works across all platforms.
Yeah.
Like Tot should be on Vision Pro now that I think about it. I mean,
it really should. It's a simple app. I have it on like iPad and iPhone. I should definitely install on the Mac because it's nice and simple. It's like
it's like
nice
a clipboard almost. Yeah, exactly. And like that would make perfect sense in Vision Pro, and I'm guessing it wouldn't take a lot of work because there's not a lot of bells and whistles in that application. But so that's cool. A great utility for you in particular as an iPad guy is Pop Clip. We covered that on a recent we covered that recently on Mac Power Users, but Pop Clip, on the iPad when you select, or on the iPhone you select a line of text, there's a contextual menu that pops up. Pop Clip it creates that feature on the Mac, but it's more customizable, so you can like have it do whatever you want. Like I have it do title case for me and all sorts of weird stuff. But if you're an iPad guy, you should definitely get yourself Pop Clip.
Okay.
There's so many, that's the thing about the Mac is it's an endless, pit of great utilities and stuff. You get into it. And it's always been the case, even in the old days when we had
10 years ago or whatever. Yeah. Quicksilver was my go-to app. I'm not sure if that's still an active development or not.
It is still around, but the one I would recommend is probably Alfred. But there's a couple different ones. Alfred is really good. There's another one called Raycast, which is very good too.
Yeah.
And then there's also Launchbar. So we have an abundance of riches there.
Yeah, it was fun going through my Mac App Store purchases. And like some of them were just like I had Little Snapper, which just totally abandonwed. I'm not sure if you remember that one. It was like a screen capture.
Yeah, I remember.
Yep.
Yeah. CleanShot X is probably the best one now for that. Yeah.
Final Cut Pro is still working and installing 10 years later. That's heck of a
crazy.
Buy.
Yeah. It's like the owners have a lot of money from other stuff. I don't know.
Right, yeah.
I guess.
As far as like settings, the settings app has undergone some changes. Any like obvious settings that people should dive into that they may not be aware of that they can tweak on the Mac?
Yeah, that's a big. Well, first of all, the application itself has changed a lot probably since you saw it last. And I don't think it's necessarily for the better, although it does kind of mirror the iPad stuff.
Yeah.
I often like to go into the keyboard settings. There's a lot of tweaks in there. I think you can go in and set that up. The dictation is pretty good on the Mac, but you can really dial in how that works. But you find that under the keyboard setting. What else? I mean, there's so much. That's another good one is kind of the desktop appearance and widgets. Like the default widget view, I don't care for. So what I do is I have it put them in monochrome, which you can change, and I have it only show when I've got display desktop icons, so they disappear at any point except when I just do the wide open on my trackpad, and then the screen clears and I see the widgets cleanly, but without all the. I don't like all the colors. I like the monochrome, and I can see what I need, and I can just go back, and I feel like that's a nice workflow that is not the default. Yeah, you just have to question Apple's defaults and figure out what works for you. Yeah,
the widgets have been fun to discover on the Mac because there are some that are very helpful, especially in the Vision Pro. I can have just glance up. Oh, my bedroom's X degrees. Let me hit the other toggle to turn on the AC and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was shocked that force clicking is still a Mac feature. Like force touch lives on in the Mac.
Barely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the wallpapers got a lot more interesting too a couple years ago. So I don't know if you played with that much, but the Apple wallpapers are really nice.
Yeah, I've been loving the California ones, all these different ones that change throughout the day.
The Sequoia has a classic Mac wallpaper that's dynamically generated, and it's like your old Mac SE screen. I mean, it is beautiful. Old timers are all going to use. I'm using it right now on mine. It's just so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I was disappointed they didn't have a new nature one because I've been enjoying those quite a bit.
Yeah.
The Shortcuts app on the Mac. Are there any like stuff there that's like special for the Mac that you find particularly useful?
We just covered this on the Automators podcast in a recent episode. I really feel like Shortcuts has come a long way, although it is confusing sometimes because not all shortcuts work on all platforms. It gets confusing, but like getting to the idea of contextual computing again, like let's say I said I don't want to do tasks and calendar on Vision Pro, but I've created a shortcut that puts my calendar on one side and my tasks on the other side, clears out all the other windows, sets the necessary timer, puts the right music on. You can do what I call setups, and then you can have setups for different kinds of work or different work modes, and those are fairly easy to create now in Shortcuts. If you'd like to learn more, go to the Automators episode on desktop setups, and I actually shared. You can download a shortcut where you can just download that one, and then you can modify it to your own need. But yeah, Shortcuts has gotten a lot more stable, and so things like that I feel like are very easily accomplished now with the most basic shortcuts. Nice.
Yeah, I should definitely look into like recording the podcast when we have FaceTime and audio hijack and notes open.
Set the focus mode so you don't get interrupted, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am a Synology user, about a year into it. I'm not sure. Do you have a Synology as well?
No, I used to do stuff like that. I had the names escape me now. What was it? The one that everybody had. There was something prior to Synology.
The Drobo.
Drobo.
I think I have a Drobo Pro in storage still somewhere.
Yeah. So, but it just got to the point where the hard drives got cheap enough and my data load is small enough that I just bought hard drives, and that's fine for what I do. And like I think the real advantage of a Synology is running it as software, having it, like transcode video and do things like that for you. And honestly, as my kids got older, I just don't transcode video that much anymore.
Yeah.
Like, most of the stuff I want is on streaming. And I don't need, I don't need to have the Barbie library available on demand. I mean, and you, there's a point in your life where you do, but then there's a point in your life where you don't.
Yeah, it was much more useful, I'd say, as an iPad only person, so I could have Synology audio. So if I didn't want to deal with iTunes Match, I could have music streaming from there, and all sorts of server stuff that just the iPad can't handle. Something I just found fascinating, though, with the Mac is, so Synology has a great app for just syncing, like, to back up your Mac. But on iOS, they've got, like, the Synology video app. They have a Synology Drive app, an audio app. Like, it feels like the iPad app experience is almost better with, like, these custom apps for, like, video and audio and stuff that just doesn't exist on the Mac, which I found just curious.
Well, it's probably because those customers need it more when you think about it.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's cool having those on the Vision Pro because they're enabled, so I can like stream video from my Synology to the Vision Pro, which is a kind of cool thing that's there.
Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah. Any other little advice to those that are getting back into the Mac?
Just enjoy it. And I think like every other Apple platform, if you're fortunate enough to have more than one, figure out what they're good at. And I think a lot of us podcasters and writers often try to smash round pegs into square holes just because we think it's fun to talk about it or we're masochists. Just find the things that the platform can do well and the things it can't do well, do on the other platform. And just, that's really, it shouldn't need to be a fight,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's been interesting with the Vision Pro stuff and developers not enabling apps at times. I sideloaded Ferrite because I really wanted to see what podcast editing would be like in the Vision Pro. Yeah. And it's surprisingly, because that app is so well designed for trackpad support, the eye tracking translates so well. Like I can be editing podcasts I'll have a keyboard, but I don't really need the trackpad at all. And it works really well with in that form factor. So I hope he enables that at some point.
I just feel like there's a lot of pennies to drop on the Vision Pro software. Like it's just been lukewarm so far.
Yeah.
And I was hoping there'd be more, but at some point Apple's going to sell enough of them, or the hardware is going to get cheaper, and they're going to be more motivated. But I feel like there's a lot of great software yet to be discovered, and maybe developers are just waiting because what's the point of it if there's nobody to buy it? But
yep.
But I do hope that because the Apple developers are some of the best in the world, and they make great stuff for all the Apple platforms. And I feel like it's only a question of time before we get that over here on Vision Pro.
Yeah, I hope so. Because as more developers adopt Swift, hopefully it'll be easier for them to migrate stuff over. And as the hardware becomes available in their country as well, that'll be an important factor too. Any other final closing thoughts here before we wrap it up?
No, I'm glad you're doing the show, though, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Vision Pro develops over the next few years. I think it's going to be an interesting ride.
Yeah, the early days of a new platform, it's just fun times to see it seems like slow evolution, but it's developing quickly, and new apps are coming out all the time.
That's another complaint I have, frankly, is when you go into the App Store, it doesn't really have a good view of everything new. It's there should be just like a chronological view of everything that's new in the last month, and there really isn't one. Yeah,
in 2010, I could pull up on the iPad, here's the list of every app, and kind of that just doesn't exist. You have to search and know what you're searching for. They're starting to have more categories, which is good, but it seems like there's missing categories from that view where I just don't know what's happening. Yeah. Where can people listen to your other podcasts and follow you online?
Yeah, my home on the internet is macsparky.com, MACSPARKY, and if you go there, that points you to all the other stuff I do.
Excellent. And then I guess one final question. I forgot to ask, what's the kind of keyboard tray you use with Apple Vision Pro? Is it anything fancy?
I bought a cheap one off Amazon, and I know that that one of the I think 12 South or somebody makes one, but the cheap plastic one I got off Amazon, it worked fine, and I just said, okay, that's good. So I didn't even.
I have one of those as well. I prefer that form factor versus 12 Souths is a very long thing versus a more of a square kind of board.
Yeah.
Which I like.
Yeah. So I'm happy with it, and it's fine. And I've got a dedicated keyboard and trackpad to it that's right next to my Vision Pro over there to the left. And I have a comfy chair, and I sit in there, and I'm probably going to be there later today doing some writing.
Excellent. Yeah. And I also found it's very critical to have a dedicated keyboard because trying to repair it and stuff.
Yeah.
There's no USB input on the Vision Pro, so there's no quick pair in that way. And for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dave. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Well, that's been a discussion with David all about the Apple Vision Pro. My thanks to David for his time recording this episode. My thanks to you for your time and attention tuning in. You can check out David's work over at MacSparky.com. And as a reminder, you can get the podcast early over at visionpros.fm/Patreon or by subscribing in Apple Podcasts. My thanks to everyone that supports the show. With that, I'll talk to everyone again real soon.